I mean, poetry saved my life. Poetry saved my life. It gave me an opportunity to see outside of the condition and the conditioning. You know, you grow up and there are things that become normalized to you. Violence becomes normalized. The violence of language, the violence against black bodies becomes normalized, whether you're watching TV, whether you're watching outside of your window, right? And so poetry for me gave me like an exit strategy. It was like, okay, how can I use language as a means to get out? And like get out, not even like I want to get out of my hood or my environment, just get out of this, like the noise of whatever is being right now.
Today's Into Healing guest is Joél Leon, a Bronx-born storyteller, poet, and author of Everything and Nothing at Once, a Black man's reimagined soundtrack for the future. This is Into Healing, and I'm your host, Mira Kaddoura. Hi, Joél.
Hi.
It's wild for me to be sitting here next to you for the first time.
Word.
And knowing that I've been connected with you through your words, through your book, through your fight for liberation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think collective fight. You know,
Collective
I mean,
fight.
like, yeah. I think we're in this together. So, yeah.
We sure are.
Yeah.
You've written My Kind of Charm works in low lighting, primarily in small groups where small talk is limited, and we jump right into childhood trauma and our stances on abolition, liberalism, and X-Men.
I definitely wrote that. I forgot I wrote that, but I did write that. Yeah.
And I was like, maybe minus the X-Men, but I think I need to talk to Joél.
Tribe. Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
What was it like to grow up as a Black boy in America?
Yeah. You see, we're going to dive right in. We're going to dive right into it. It was a multitude of things. I think, and it's something I try to be mindful of now more than anything when I'm talking about the experience. So I grew up in the Bronx, 188th and Creston Avenue, for those who are not familiar. And so a lot of my upbringing, growing up in the 80s, Reaganomics era, peak crack time. And so there's a mixed bag that comes with that. There's joy, I think, in spite of, I think, the circumstances, especially from like the outside world. I think if you're thinking about how media portrays a lot of like neighborhoods, like what we would call like the ghetto or the hood, there was a lot of joy. There was a lot of joy. There was a lot of playing. Also, too, I think a lot of reimagining circumstances. You know, you grow up in certain environments and you learn how to adapt. It's something like I talk to my eldest daughter, Lila, about now. It's like keeping her head on a swivel. It's like it's something we'll say growing up in the hood, where it's like you just have to be monitoring everything. You have to see everything, and that's really for your safety. And that feels like a lot. Like even when I think about it now, like that feels like a lot of pressure. And so I have to be mindful when I tell that to her, because I still want her to be a child, but I also need her to be aware. Because I grew up having to be aware, you know, because not for nothing, a lack of awareness could get you killed. You feel me? So a lot of it for me was fun, joy. It was scary sometimes. You know, I grew up in a single parent household. My father was in and out, and a lot of that had to do with his own like personal demons and trauma. He was a Vietnam veteran, suffered from bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. He was schizophrenic, and so a lot of that was enabled by Vietnam. Some of that was also enabled by the neighbor, like the environment that he grew up in Pensacola, Florida. And so, you know, you learn at an early age what trauma looks like. You don't have the language for it, which is why I think language is so important to me, and like creating an invitation for others to like adopt a language and an understanding of language to be able to better like label an experience. Because so often, if you're a Black boy growing up in America, or a Black girl, or a Black non-binary person, I mean a marginalized person, Black or brown person especially, you don't grow up with the language. You don't really have the language. You're feeling things, you're seeing things are happening to you or around you that you can't really necessarily label. And that's hard. You know, that's hard when you, as much as I am a person who's like a relationship anarchist in the sense of like, I identify much with like binaries and like labels and constructs, or I try to like avoid them as much as humanly possible. Those constructs also provide us like some level of boundaries and safety to a certain extent, or knowing. And so I spent a lot of time growing up not knowing, and having to figure it out on my own, right? And so that's also to where the reimagining comes in, like whether it was me creating stories in my mama's bedroom, or comic books or songs, or like a lot of these things were also an escape route for me. And so I think part of that experience has also allowed me to kind of show up here in the ways that I do, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You speak about Black masculinity in your new book, Everything and Nothing at Once,
Yeah.
a Black man's reimagined soundtrack for
I
the
do.
future.
I do. Yeah, yeah.
I've pulled a few paragraphs that touched me deeply. Would you mind reading anything that calls you?
Yeah. I am flawed. I've made mistakes. I've been unfaithful. I've lied and misled. I've fallen short of who I have liked to be on too many occasions to count. I will forever be a work in progress. We all are. I am not only pushing myself to be better, my hope is that this will encourage other cis-hetero, able-bodied Black men to dig deeper, to engage with their own sense of entitlement, of shame, fear, and vulnerability, so we can be better accomplices and allies to all members of our community. It's not bad. It's not bad.
So tell me more about how you became self-aware of your reality.
The first thought that came to mind, Buddhism. I think, and it's funny. It's something I kind of struggled with, like identifying that, and primarily because I didn't really feel like a good Buddhist, or like I didn't really feel like I had the right to call myself a practitioner of the faith, because I haven't been to a monastery, or I haven't been to like a silent retreat, like that kind of shit. So I think, but for me, Buddhism really gave me an anchor to which to navigate like mindfulness, gratitude, really. There's a few books I think of primarily. There was Gary Zukav's Seed of the Soul, Eckhart Tolle's the Power, the New Earth, and I think the Power of Now, both. And then also too, Ayanna Van Zant had a book that came out in the 90s. I think it was the Spirit of a Black Man or something along those lines. And granted, those are not necessarily rooted in Buddhism, but I think a lot of the practices that show up in the faith showed up in those bodies of work. And so those kind of gave me a roadmap when I was seeking, when I just ended this really beautiful 6-year partnership. And a lot of that also brought up a lot for me, like a lot of things that I needed to work on, not just as a man, but as a Black man, like my experience with, and my experience really rather in relationship. And it also kind of gave me, it gave me an opportunity to really dig deep about like in that passage, like a lot of my flaws. And I was just kind of coming of age. I was about to, I had just turned 30 after this relationship broke up. And so there was just a lot of self-discovery and like renewal of sorts for me, And so that became a part of my practice. It's like, and again, it feels like a lot of work. And I think even when I'm saying that now, it is, and it should be. I think that the human experience is a noble one. And it's a thing I take very seriously, in spite of how funny I am. And so, right. So I think, but part of that work for me is like really trying to tap into to the areas of being that I feel like could use a little bit more elbow grease, a little more oil, like where am I falling short based on my own standards? And then also too, like I have good metrics, like I have a partner, I have children, I have community, right? Such as yourself, like folks who are also doing the work, and then also I think keeping me honest. And like that's a really big part of me, and like like being honest, because I spent a lot of time not being honest with other people and myself.
And yourself, yeah.
Right? And so like this is the safest I felt, and I feel safe now because I'm just honest with myself, and so I'm able to show up in experiences and community with that level of honesty, where it's like an accountability, where it's okay to be called in. I'd much rather a call in than a call out, to be honest. But that's another conversation. But I do think so much of that work of me getting from like point A to like point whatever point I am at right now, a lot of that was like kind of mired in like Buddhism and like the approach and the practice of it, and just giving me a thing to focus on, to say, okay, oh, here are some pillars I can work through, here are some spaces I can work through, and being able to tap into what feels aligned, and also what doesn't, right? You know, and
Yeah,
so
of
like
course.
I have a really good like an idea of like what feels aligned and what doesn't now, in ways that I definitely didn't have like however many years ago, you know?
What made you want to reimagine a new vision for Black men? Was there a story or a moment?
I mean, I think there were a few
Many?
moments. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many opportunities. I think of a dear friend of mine, Buck, who passed away some years ago. He died of a heart attack, and his mother had passed away a few years prior to him passing away. And so, you know, I like to say like Buck, I think, died of a broken heart. He never really recovered from that. And you know, but Buck and I grew up together. Buck was a little older than me, but we come from the same neighborhood. So I remember leaving for college. Like I went to Temple University, and I remember leaving and being like, yo, like Buck and I remember us vividly having this conversation. I can't remember if I was coming back or I just left. But being like, yo, bro, you can leave too. You know what I'm saying? Like yeah, you can leave too, but there were so many, like he like, you know, Buck had a kid really young, and so he just kind of had to go right back. He had to go right to work, and so like at one point we were working together, like we were working in the stock room at this retail spot together, and it's just like one of those things where like you grow up around so many Black men who don't feel like they have options or have choices, and then they get put in situations that ultimately start defining the rest of their lives. And like we don't think about it in that way at that time. We don't have the tools, we don't have the resources. And so even with the book, you know, it's aimed toward Black men, yes, but I really want it to be, I want folks to recognize that it's for all of us. You know, it speaks to Black men because I am a Black man. So like I wanted to make sure that experience was honored. You know, it was honored because it needed to be. But so much of the work for me in with regards to like wanting to reimagine was seeing like seeing so many of us, whether it be folks I knew or like folks I was connected through other people, and seeing stories that weren't being told, or especially seeing my story, my specific story, and like how I kind of came up and grew up not being told in the ways that I knew I could tell it. And I mean, but that reimagining started with me first, you know. So if I can reimagine it for myself, then it creates an opportunity for me to potentially reimagine it for others as well. And not that like that's not my, I don't want to say that's my purpose. Like I'm not here to be a teacher per se. I don't want to put that kind of, I don't want to say egoic pressure on it, but the idea of recognizing there's a level of wisdom that I've been able to garner through my own experiences. And so what does it look like to share that in a way that is intentional and loving, right? And so much of that to me is about the reimagining. It's about the curiosity, right? And then also too, the seeing other Black men in history and Black folks in general reimagining their lives and their existences and their ways of being, and even seeing it now coming full circle. Like I think of folks like Mahogany Brown, brilliant poet and friend of mine who continues to reimagine art and Blackness in ways. You know, my friend Frederick Joseph who reimagines masculinity and patriarchy and what these institutions look like. You know, it's really about seeing the thing and then saying, okay, there has to be another way. Like, and like, is this working? Like, that's the kind of question I like to ask myself. And I think God, whoever God might be in this universe, is like asking me constantly, like, why? So like, I'll answer a thing, and then like the next question will be, okay, why? You know, it's like kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be as childlike as possible in that process, where it's like, how do we get to the meat of the thing, and how do we keep unpacking it? And sometimes you never get to a resolution, and I think that's okay. But the practice is the unpacking, because the unpacking also then leads to the reimagining too. You know.
Yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah.
In your book, you say to survive where they have told you that survival is outside the realm of possibility. See, I'm going to get choked up saying that.
Yeah.
That sentence stopped me in my tracks and connected to me on such a visceral level.
Yeah.
How did writing and poetry enter your life and become a way to heal and to imagine new possibilities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, poetry saved my life. Poetry saved my life. It gave me an opportunity to see outside of the condition and the conditioning. You know, you grow up and there are things that become normalized to you. Violence becomes normalized. The violence of language, the violence against black bodies becomes normalized, whether you're watching TV, whether you're watching outside of your window, right? And so poetry for me gave me like an exit strategy. It was like, okay, how can I use language as a means to get out? And like get out, not even like I want to get out of my hood or my environment, just get out of this, like the noise of whatever is being right now. And again, I didn't have the language for it, but I just knew like hip hop, which in and of itself is this beautiful form of poetry, was the gateway for me. It was like, oh, I'm seeing these black men on the screen who feel like superheroes, who feel like folks who aren't accessible to me. You know what I'm saying? Like some folks, they're superheroes with the drug dealers, or it was their parents, you know what I'm saying? Or it might have been like the TV show stars. But for me, it was the rappers, you know what I'm saying? It was Biggie, it was Pac, it was Rakim, it was Big Daddy Kane, it was Nas, it was, you know, and then I got older and it became Lupe Fiasco. It became all these other folks who were doing these remarkable things with language. Because like I wasn't really into Yeats and Whitman, and you know what I'm saying, it took a while before I got into like Ginsberg and Kerouac. It was, for me, it was like the hood, these hood poets who were taking the things that we were all seeing collectively and putting them to music and to rhythm. And that for me, that felt like a call. Like that felt like a clarion call for me. Like, oh, I can hear myself in this. You feel me? And so I was never like, yo, rap is gonna get me out of the hood per se, but it was more like, yo, this is the thing that I need to be doing, you know? And I don't know what that is, you know, or what that was, but poetry gave me an opportunity to like stretch myself. And then also too, just like explore. Like I've never really been a big traveler person. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not I got mad passport stamps, so I'm trying to go see all these different places. You know what I'm saying? And no knock on anybody else who does. I think it's incredibly important. But reading and writing were always kind of like the ways for me to see outside of like whatever the box either I was in or people were trying to put me in, right? And so even with the book, like I'm exploring language in a way that is, I know, both prosaic and poetic, and then also too very much like rap. Like there's sometimes there's like some rhyming patterns in there. Like I've treated the book kind of like an opportunity to just fully express all parts of myself through the language. And also it's like a guidebook. I wanted to give us an opportunity to see language in different ways, in ways that I think shift the paradigm, hopefully, and also kind of allow folks to extrapolate their own experience out of mine. Because so much of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is about survival. It's about like, I got to feed my family, I got to feed my kids, I got to feed myself, I got to go to work in this place that doesn't see me, doesn't acknowledge me, or is causing me harm. And then so like, where can I find some level of reprieve, you know? And language and art were that for me. They still are, you know?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
In your book, you say, no one taught us feelings. Nobody taught black boys how to feel things. No one around us knew how. And I can empathize with that a lot, growing up, how I grew up in wars.
Yeah.
You know, there's no space for feelings when you're in such survival mode. You're in fight or flight mode, right?
Yeah.
How did you learn to feel your feelings?
My mom, Linda T. I think I was always feeling my feelings. I think I was always a bit more feminine. I was always a bit more open. I used to joke that this is horrible, but I used to think that I was like the reincarnation of Dr. King when I was like, younger. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it's because I played Dr. King in a second grade play, and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm now Dr. King. I've now taken over his throne in second grade. This is my job.
So good.
Yeah, you know, I was ready. So like we'd be playing like football in the street. I'd be like, come on, y'all. We get into like a fight. Like we gotta make some peace, y'all. Like, I don't know. What's wrong with me? But but part of it was like, yo, I'm like, I'm walking this line where, I don't know. For me, it's just kind of always been, I don't know. It's been imperative for me to like seek outside of the thing, seek outside of the thing. And so much of that was kind of given to me by my mom, because I could watch my mom. And my mom is showing up in these very simple ways, but like what my mom did, and it's something I've learned. Like I had a conversation with another father some years ago, talking about his daughter, Nia Witherspoon, brilliant playwright, and I was just asking him about him and his wife raising Nia, and he was like, the best thing we could do was get out of Nia's way. And it was a thing I took home with me. Like my daughter Lila was maybe about a year old at the time, and so it made me think of my mom in that way. Like my mom just kind of got out of my way, and some of that is because she couldn't get in my way because she was working late night. She was working a late night shift at Jacoby Hospital for like 34 years. And so, there was a lot of time where like she'd be like, she comes home, she makes dinner, you know what I'm saying? She makes sure my homework is okay, then she goes to sleep and she has to go back to work. You know what I'm saying? And so that period of time when she's sleeping and getting ready for work is me playing, and it's me kind of figuring out the world. And my mom was never like, you're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, or nah, it was just like, my mom still says it like, like reach for the moon. Like she wants me to kind of just reach for the thing. And so that's what I did. I just reached for the thing. And the most accessible thing to me was art. And so, but that art, I think, allowed for it allowed for me to re-feel. Because like I was always writing about my feelings, whether it was me liking a girl or me, I was writing like love poetry like way too early. It was bad too, but I mean, it's elementary school. You know what I'm saying? Well, what can you do? You know what I mean? I like you, you like me. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. But so much of it was rooted in like I'm feeling things, and I knew for whatever reason inherently I needed a way to express it. And so some of that came out with imaginary friends. Some of that came out in like, the comic books. But it was like I was always feeling something. And that makes you a target in the hood. That makes you, that make like, even now, I'm, in my neighborhood, I'm looking people in the eyes and I'm saying good morning. And like, even as Black men, there's always this kind of like, what do you want from me? You know what I'm saying? And it's like love. I'm not trying to, you know what I'm saying? And like when you're conditioned in a way to see love as not a possibility, really, or like you see love very much through the lens of like heteronormative romantic ideas, as opposed to love as a conduit for change, for evolution, for connection. And that's what love is for me. And so much of that is like before bell hooks, before anybody else, it was my mom who kind of laid out that blueprint for me. And not even just so through language. Like my mom told us she loves us all the time, but it was more through just her actions and her availability, and also just not trying to crush my dreams. My mom, she didn't have time for it, to be fair. You know what I'm saying?
She didn't have
She
time
wanted
to
to, she's
crush the
busy.
dreams.
You know what I'm saying? She at work. Dream away, brother. I got stuff to do. But, so much of it was like, she was just available for them. Like my mom was at every single school play, and if she couldn't, my stepdad would be there. Like it was just these very small things that let me know that it was okay for me to dream a little bit.
How do we make room for Black boys to feel their feelings?
Love them. We have to love them, and we have to love them in spite of. I think so much of our love is conditional. It's you make some great A, great grades, get A's. There's so many mistakes that we don't get to make. The one mistake might land you in juvie. It might land you in jail. It might land you in the wrong place of law enforcement. It might land you in the special class. It might land you in the principal's office. It doesn't lend itself to us being able to express ourselves in a way that's not judgmental, and so that's the practice. But like so much of that's because we don't know how to do that for ourselves. When I see folks who show up in ways that I think are closed off to the idea of reimagining like what a Black experience looks like, so much of that is because we're closed off to experiencing a new way of being for ourselves, and if I'm open to that thing, then that means I can be open to other things, and so a lot of that is like love them, but also we have to kind of love ourselves, in spite of, because I don't think we love ourselves in spite of. I think we have a hard time showing grace for ourselves, which is why we have a really hard time showing grace to others. I think we have a really hard time understanding what accountability looks like. I think we adopt carceral culture in a way where, everything feels like imprisonment when you do something wrong, and it's like, how do we kind of break free of the binary that exists? Because if I want to be an abolitionist, then I really have to practice it across the board, even in the spaces that feel uncomfortable, and also feel like they defy what we define as right or wrong, and that is a practice, and we have to do that for ourselves first, and then when we start doing that, then it kind of opens the pathway to think more broadly about how we get to allow more space for folks to just be and to like make mistakes and fail. I failed so many times, and there were times where I was not given room to do that by others. And we're young, what I'm saying? We don't have the language. I think growing older has given me the language, which then allows me to talk to my nephew, like my nephew Justin. Justin is 23. So like the conversations him and I are getting to have, I was not having at 23. I might have been thinking around the areas, but I didn't have the language. I also didn't have another person who had gone through the experience, who not even willing, but also had the tools to like see me and go, okay, well, bro, you could be, what if you thought about it this way? It was all trial and error for me. I'm a big ass crash dummy out here, but because of that, and because of the love I have of myself, it's really easy for me to just kind of show up in love for others. And I think that's where we start. You know what I'm saying? It's love them, but we also have to love ourselves first.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the carceral construct.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
In your book, you say Black love and adult friendships require us to see things through the lens of not only reciprocity, communication, accountability, validation, and boundaries, a few pillars that help us maintain healthy relationships, but requires moving from a carceral construct towards an abolitionist mindset when it comes to our friendships.
Yeah.
Why do we need to move away from a carceral system of punishment? And why is punishment not serving us?
I mean, like, do you want to be imprisoned? Like, what? I know you don't. I know you don't. But it's yeah. But it's so wild to me the ways in which we
punish.
Yeah, we punish and we imprison ourselves. Like punishment, and so much of that is rooted in the ways that we've learned how to justify right or wrong. So much of that is unfortunately like been pulled from religious text, and like the misunderstandings I think that come from a very skewed way of seeing faith and religion. So many of the errors are very much man-made in that way, and so it's not working. Like prisoners is not working, and it's odd to me that we continue to use that as a means to like, I don't know, justify to really like justify this notion that we have to punish people for doing things wrong, because and it's very much it's servitude of ego in that way. You can look at the data. You know what I'm saying? Like violent offenders going to prison. Violent crime hasn't stopped. You know what I'm saying? Like the death penalty is not stopping people from committing crimes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like simple stuff like that to me. It's, and then you start asking the big questions about capitalism and like who benefits from carceral culture and capitalism in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a private system, right?
Yeah, right. And so, but I think if we extend the conversation to like carceral culture, because if I'm looking at the system, then I can also think about the other systems in place here, and like in my body, and like in community, and the ways in which we imprison each other, by essentially trying to keep people in a fixed box, if you will, a prison of emotion, a prison of thought. And I think what's wild to me is how we don't see the parallels and connections. It's the thing I've been talking about more often, like especially when I think of like shame and guilt, which are very much white supremacist tactics, right? And I think there was a point in time when maybe shame worked, I think about the 1960s, and I think about the civil rights movement a lot, and I think about how newspapers were kind of really bringing to life like the violence that folks were seeing laid against black bodies at the time, and like how people were startled by it. You know what I'm saying? You see four young black girls bombed, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. We're watching the mass genocide of Palestinians on a daily basis, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening, right? And it's like, okay, we're having the same conversations. Why? And so much of that is like a justified punishment for what people deem to be a wrong. It's the same way we think about terrorism, and it's like, who
is the terrorist?
Who are the people creating the labels? And who are the people who are using force to justify, their actions? And so all of that is rooted in this notion of like we have to punish people for what we deem to be wrong, and then we have to ask ourselves like who is the judge of that? And so much of that is again rooted in white supremacist logic. We don't get free in that way, and we have to be willing to challenge these assumptions, of like, I'm going to punish this person because they did such and such. And, so much of this is nuanced, and we don't leave a lot of room for nuance in these conversations, which again, to me, that's carceral. It's like, you did this thing, so you're going to be punished for it. Like, there's no room for like, okay, well, in this situation, based on these circumstances, like we don't do that. And that to me, all like that limits how we get free. That limits liberation. I think it actually keeps us from it in very small, simple ways. I can look at Instagram comments, and go, okay, yeah, we're not getting free anytime soon, because we're missing the plot. We get caught up in these really minuscule arguments about things that don't matter much at all when people are dying. People need water. People need clothing. Women need tampons. You know what I'm saying? Like these very simple things that I would in any other circumstance would not even be a question. But because we're looking to seek a wrong person in a narrative, someone to paint as a villain in order to justify our violence, which is very much again like how carceral culture works, and we're punishing people. And like if you're not looking at the circumstances in which create the violence that's happening, it's not very honest.
I recently saw this documentary. It's actually an album release, but done as a movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's so touching. It's called Songs from the Hole.
Okay.
And there was a sentence in that movie that like touched me so much, and it says, "My healing cannot be found in someone else's punishment."
Yeah, that's
right?
That's a truth.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we heal?
Yeah.
We're not going to heal by punishing everyone.
No.
And where does forgiveness play in? And
yeah.
Yeah.
And we think we will. And again, it's just wild to me because we keep repeating the same practice. And it's something I'd shared some time ago. And granted, like there's been other iterations of this, but we can't use old tools like for new ways of getting free. Like it's just not gonna work. And if you're a study of history, which I wish we were all more often,
or we taught it at schools.
Oh yeah, maybe, maybe, because I think so much of like, whether we're talking about book bans or any other of the systemic policies that are really trying to like crush movement, both on the left and right. It really goes back to this idea of how do we quell the desire for change, and that desire I think is rooted in like seeing the thing and being like, oh, this has not been working. But the folks know, the folks in power know it's not working, so they continue to use ways to again justify, right, this as like like we're gonna punish them, right, like serving the time, but the serving the time doesn't bring the person back. It doesn't bring the money back, whatever might have been lost, and for maybe a brief second, maybe however long we want to measure that second, there might be some level of relief, like justice was served. Like we say that often, and I'm like, what actually is justice? And again, who gets to define?
Who's defining justice?
Yeah.
So Toni Morrison wrote, "The function of freedom is to free someone else." Let's talk about collective liberation.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do that.
So Black Palestinian solidarity has been spoken about from everyone from the Black Panther Party to Malcolm X to Angela Davis and James Baldwin, Mark Lamont Hill.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your journey into collective liberation?
You know, it's interesting because I've garnered like a new level of like community. Unfortunately, since October 7th, and there are folks who are kind of like in community with me on social prior to, who have like it's been said a few times where it's like I really enjoyed seeing like the evolution of you is what I've heard. And you know, I say thank you, and then I also in my mind I'm like, well, the I've been talking about love since I don't know when. And what I've always tried to make very clear for people is when I've been talking about love, I'm not talking about love in the heteronormative romantic sense of how we think about love and how we think about love as a way to bring people together to make a baby. You know what I'm saying? Like that's cool. But for me, love is really about the thing that can catalyze a movement and can radicalize a movement and can radicalize people. You know, like you mentioned the Black Panther Party, and the thing I bring up often, the most loving, most communal, most revolutionary thing the Black Panthers did was create the free breakfast program. You know, I don't think it was like them storming the Capitol with guns. It wasn't them having shootouts with the police. It wasn't like the black berets and the black jackets and the leather. You know what I'm saying? Like even a 10-point program, incredibly important. But like that free breakfast program, you know, that's the foundation for welfare as we know it today. It created an opportunity for us to see love in full force. Because like they said, we see a hole, we see a gaping hole here in our communities. How can we support the people who need it the most? And that is an act of love. And I think that act of love is really connected to liberation, to collective liberation and communal liberation. You know, we were kind of talking about this offset. You know, we can beg and plead for people to leave their jobs and you know, if you feel like you're being silenced here, you know, if you feel like you can't unionize here, it's like yes, absolutely. And also, you know, again, when we talk about the nuance, like, do we have mutual aid set up? Like actual mutual aid where communities can support each other, and we don't. And so much of that is anchored and rooted in capitalism. Capitalism has separated us. It has separated communities so that people, like, you're seeing it now. You know, I can go into my, like, DM requests on Instagram. I'm being tagged for GoFundMes across the board for Palestinians who are searching for a way out of Gaza. And so, you know, like I do any and everything that I can to share the information, donate where I can, tag people who might also be able to help amplify the work. You know, that is mutual aid. Really, it's like how are we supporting each other collectively?
Yeah.
You know, and that is how we get free. You know, and I think the journey for me was just, again, it was just love. Like where am I needed in showing up for that? And I would love for all of us to kind of, you know, center ourselves in that way. I am by no means perfect at all, but I think the ability to go, oh, there's a thing happening here. How can I show up for said thing in the ways that I can? Like where do I have capacity? And that's a question I ask myself often, you know, whether in love, in life, in work. It's like, where do I have capacity? And if I don't, I get to be honest with myself about that. But we're not going to get free in a vacuum. You know, the Panthers got it, Hampton got it, Malcolm got it, Martin got it. You know what I'm saying? Ida B. Wells got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, all these folks, these luminaries, you know, they got it. They understood it. And so for me, even now when I'm looking at, as much as we're like witnessing and bearing witness to a genocide of epic proportions and across the globe, right? Like, you know, whether we're right?
Congo,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's what I've been seeing is like, you know, I wouldn't be sitting across from you if it wasn't for collective liberation. You know what I'm saying? Like if we weren't seeing each other and really also seeking some way out and seeking hope. And to me, that's what collective liberation is about. And so that journey for me was really about seeing the thing and calling attention to a thing. It was really a no-brainer for me. And then also, too, it's like I can't call attention to a thing until I have real institutional knowledge about said thing, you know? Like being very much aware of what has been happening in Palestine, but you're getting pushed in comments like, well, if you really knew the history, and it's like, okay, cool, let me go double check, and then you're like, oh wow, I really know the history. Oh, shit is really fucked up. You know what I'm saying? And so much of like collective liberation is about knowing. It's about knowing the truth about ourselves and each other, and also what we're up against, and like we collectively, because the fight in Palestine, the fight in Sudan is no different than the fight in cop cities across the country, right? And having to see those parallels in order to recognize we are literally in this fighting together.
All the dots connect.
Yeah, all of them consistently, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're part of the same system.
Yeah. The idea that we have to wait on politicians to enable some level of liberation is such a falsehood, and it's not real.
No, it's not going to come from the system that's actually keeping people.
No, like why would that? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like the calls are coming from inside the house, and like which is why too was really, like I'll use phone banking as an example. And listen, for all it's worth, I think there were probably some politicians who potentially would heed the call. Like if you're getting 500 emails or calls a day from like your constituents about, well, what is ailing the community, right? But if I'm getting $500,000 from AIPAC, I do not give a flying fuck about what you are phone banking me about. This is paying my bills. This is paying for someone's livelihood and also their opportunity to stay in office. And like so much of that is rooted in power. Like why would I give that up because you're calling me? I don't care. Like I'm here for a reason, and a lot of that reason is not servicing the people. It's like servicing self and servicing ego. We're seeing it now. And so, like I'd argue that Biden cares more about power and ego and legacy than he does about people. And then, folks want to argue if someone's a good person or not. And like, I'm not really here for that conversation. Because at the end of the day, it's like people, if I'm just looking at this through the lens of how people show support and solidarity, and it's like, I don't know, it's like simple math to me. Like if you have money for warplanes and missiles, but we don't have money for education, I think there's a problem, right?
Or food.
Or healthcare. It doesn't add up. And so for me, it's like if we're looking at college campuses across the country right now, it's the people. It has always been the people. You know what I'm saying? Like if we think about the Vietnam War, it has always been the people. And then the people force politicians to do something. Ideally, that wouldn't be the case. In an ideal utopian world, like people would see a wrong and then address it. But there's too many politics at play. There's too much money involved. You know what I'm saying? There's too many people who benefit from certain systems being in place. And so it is up to us. It's like if you see a broken street light in your neighborhood, like we call 311. You know what I'm saying? And like to me, that's as simple a reference as I can bring to mind. It's you see a thing and we see a thing collectively and then we address it. And then we force other people to do something about it. We force those people who are supposed to be representing us to do something about it. And a lot of that force is not going to come with phone banking. It's going to come from divesting. It's going to come from boycotting. It's going to come from making a lot of noise. It's going to come from making their lives miserable. This kind of goes back to carceral culture. And like, two things can be true at once. Where it's like, I don't believe in carceral culture. I also want everyone who's inflicting pain upon the marginalized to suffer. And there's a very hard distinction for me to like sit with. Like the part of me that is very much Buddhist in nature, and also the part of me that wants people to pay, wants people to pay. And the way you do that, if we remove ego from that, is also by hurting their pockets and hurting their chances.
Well, that's why BDS is so powerful.
Right. Yeah. And hurting also their chances for re-election. You know what I'm saying? Like what I tell people often is like, Trump is a racist by default. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think racism just kind of falls into the pillars of power. And so for him, it's like, I want money and I want fame. I want stardom. I want to be seen. I want to be forward facing. So I'm just going to say whatever I need to say in order to do that. You hate black people? Me too. You don't like gay people? Yeah, I'm with it. I don't, you know what I'm saying? It's like, he's like, pick a card, any card.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? But it's all rooted in like the ego.
Yes.
You know, so much of this is rooted in the ego. I can look at it, and this is why for me, getting rid of a Netanyahu doesn't change anything, because there will always be another Netanyahu who's looking to have control and dominion over a population. This is what I'm saying. And so like, if we're not, and like, so when I talk about love, I'm not talking about love in this fairy tale way. I'm like, love is the active force that's going to drive change. That's going to drive people to change how they view the world and each other. You know what I'm saying? And you have to destroy the system, and you also have to destroy these systems of belief that would have a person feel like another person is inferior to them. You know, that is a power dynamic. That does not change with a law. That changes with the actual politic of the person. You have to change the people, you know, or put them on a spaceship and send them away. You know, that's my ideal scenario. Put all folks who are not for the liberation of all people someplace else that is not causing harm. You know, because at the end of the day, it's you have to change the mindset of the person, or which is very hard to do, right? Because you can't really change the mind or heart of an oppressor. Or what you do is you give, what I've always said is like, I don't want to change racist to anti-racist. I just want to give anti-racists bigger bullhorns. You know what I'm saying? Like, give ourselves a bigger platform, and also folks who may be neutral to understand what's at stake. You know, but so much of that is us. That has nothing to do with the politicians, and that's everything to do with us and like how we're raising our babies, how we're raising communities. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I see little Zionist children spitting at Palestinians, in my head, I'm like, oh, this looks no different than the era of Bull Connor in segregation. Like, I can see it. Like, I know what that looks like. Yeah. I know what the indoctrination looks like. But like that indoctrination is like, that's not a political system. That is a system of belief and people. And so again, it starts with us, because those people then grow up to be politicians. Those people then grow up to be soldiers. They grow up to be the folks who are enacting laws, who are enacting judgments on others. And so it starts at a core. The core principle is us first.
So there seems to be, for me, that there's a lot of people that are living in fear. You know, you talk about love, but there's a lot of people living in fear of the other, fear, and you know, some fears, deep-seated fears of erasure, of extermination. So they're real, right? Yeah. They're rooted in trauma. They're rooted in real things. Yeah. How do we shift from fear to love?
Seeing each other. You know, I pride. If there's one thing I pride myself on, it's creating safe spaces for people. And trying my best to do so. And in order to do that, I have to see myself. I have to also see others, and I also have to see others' motivations. Because I care about people. I care about humanity in that way. Which, again, if we're going back to Buddhism, I can't see anyone as an enemy. Granted, that contradicts some of what I was saying earlier. And again, like, you know.
And that is the beauty of life.
That is the beauty, you know, not for nothing, this is a brief tangent, but like, I think about Tupac a lot, you know, because, you know, Tupac could write a song like Dear Mama, can also write a song like How Do You Want It, which is incredibly misogynistic and just like, and then you watch the video, it's way misogynistic, you know what I'm saying? But there's also, there's two sides of this coin to this man who also was like, Tupac was 26 when he died, when he was murdered. And so I say all that to say, like, having to see all sides of ourselves and each other, and then also allowing and believing in the potential for change. Very much an abolitionist mindset. It's a thing that comes up a lot. Like, I talked to my friend Joél Ellen, an abolitionist based out in Minneapolis, and so much of that work that her and I talk about, and something that she's reminded me of often, it's like this undeniable faith in this future existence to be true. You know, even if we can't see it right now, you have to kind of have this unyielding faith that it will come to pass and come to be. And so part of that for me is being able to see the humanity in everybody, even in the people I choose not to like, you know. And part of that is also having to recognize we're all in relationship with each other, even the people we don't like. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't like a Donald Trump. Am I in relationship with him? Absolutely, because there are people who believe firmly in what he's spewing, regardless of such, regardless of what, regardless of how like the world might actually prove otherwise, you know?
And those people are connected to me, whether I like it or not.
In some way, shape, or form. Like, because they're connected to somebody else that might be connected to me. Like, those 6 degrees are true. There, and like, if we're thinking of energy as a wavelength, then I have to imagine that what I am transmitting and putting out into the world also is going to be received and seen by others who are doing the same kind of work. But in order to do that, I have to see the humanity in everybody. because that's where love starts. In order to get over the fear, someone has to be vulnerable first. Someone has to kind of be willing to like come to the edge of the cliff and say, okay, I'll go. And then you gotta hope that somebody else is like, all right, cool, me too. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what's on the other side of that. But that's where it starts. And this is why like my favorite people are also the most curious, right? Such as yourself. It's like we were talking about this earlier. It's the want to get to know a person and a people and experience. And it's in subtle little ways. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this weird thing that's happening now where like you don't know what people are going to say to you based on what, like if I have a keffiyeh on, like how people are going to respond to that. The same way, honestly, like if I see someone with a yarmulke on now, it's like it creates a level of conversation that maybe didn't exist for a lot of us 5 or 6 years ago. And so part of that is like having to let go of assessments and judgments about people. A lot of our prejudices and biases are rooted in like the ways we visually and physically see each other without actually giving ourselves the opportunity to like be surprised. Real quick example, I remember getting off the train and there was this white woman who like just seemed like she was in a rush. She was just in a rush, and like she was going up the stairs and she kind of like brushed past this black woman because like I think she was like just moving too slow. She's trying to get somewhere. In my head, I'm like judging this entire experience that I'm watching unfold. And then this same woman gets through the turnstile, and there was this brother who just needed a swipe. He was trying to get onto the train, and she stopped. This person who seemed to be very busy at the time stopped, dug in her wallet, found a MetroCard, swiped them in, and kept them moving. And I don't know, like an unaware Joél might have missed that. Some people might not even think that's a moment, but for me, it called to mind the ways in which we prejudge and essentially create a diagnosis about folks without knowing nothing, because that caught me off guard. I wouldn't have expected that based on what I was assuming about this person. And a lot of that is rooted in like being okay with that vulnerable experience of being wrong, and also having to let go of preconceived notions about a people, because so much of what we do is what we're imagining without any real context, for what that relationship dynamic could be.
Yeah. And any preconceived notions or any things that we've been told about certain people, right? All of it.
Yeah.
What do you think are some like practical things people can do to do this work of getting free together?
It seems really simple, but I think a gratitude journal can do wonders for us. Because my practice of like awareness, and kind of like going back to the question you'd asked me before, and like this is kind of rooted in like the gratitude journal. There was a point in time like I would do this exercise where I would walk outside and be like, okay, I'm only going to focus on the color yellow for this walk, right? So I would just look at yellow cars, yellow signs, yellow jackets, like wherever I saw yellow, and like that really just helped me deepen my focus, right? But it also helped me find gratitude in the things I could see, and then it's like, oh, I can see. Right? Like the layers, the levels. And so whether it's, being able to like witness a breeze move through a tree, or like see, like there's this thing that my daughter and Lila do when we're walking. We've been doing it lately. It's like spring is here. So like we keep looking at these trees on the block and waiting for the leaves to sprout. So much of that is rooted in attention, but it's also rooted in gratitude, like being grateful for this life. For this existence. So I think a gratitude journal is one way to do that, which is directly connected, I think, to a mindfulness practice. Just being mindful of our surroundings, because the more mindful I am, I think almost by osmosis, also the more curious we get about the things we're mindful of. You know what I'm saying? And I try to get really granular with that mindfulness. Like why people make the choices that they make. And not judging that, but just examining. I like to say I'm taking inventory of the world, and if I'm treating life as an experiment, which I do, and I guess that's another thing. Like treating life as an experiment. It's like I'm here in this physical once, and so I want to try things. I want to meet people. I want to experience things, and I want to experience people as well. And so, in order to do that, I need to be willing to experiment, to see where things go without judging the experience, and without like these preset conditions or ideas about what this experience is going to look like, because that naturally like inhibits how we get to show up for the experience. You know, I also think too, it's about being curious and asking questions of myself first, and then asking questions of others. You know, being willing to unpack like why do I feel this way? Like, you know, something as simple as a lot of what we've been given as a practice, I think, has been given to us, and we haven't given ourselves the opportunity to consider, does this practice work for me? You know, I think about this through the lens of monogamy. I think about this through the lens of religion. I think about this through the lens of a lot of things that have just been given to us that we've accepted wholeheartedly without saying, does this actually work? Does this benefit me? Does this benefit my community? You know, and leaving room for that exploration. I think it's just a practical way, just to asking questions like, why? Like, why do I need this thing? Why do I want this thing? What am I motivated by? You know, because that's going to unravel some things. You know, who am I? You know, and like that's a big question. Like I like to ask of the people I care about, like, who are you if you are not blank? You know what I'm saying? Like, who are you if you are not a Zionist? Who are you if you are not a parent or a teacher or a writer, right? Like all these ways that we get to unpack these ways of being that we've become attached to. And a lot of that is the fear, because letting go of that thing and unraveling that thing also opens the door of like, oh, okay, well then who am I? If I've identified myself as all these other things. And that gets to the core of being, I think.
It's almost like stripping away all the things that you've either been taught to believe or you've been told to believe, and trying to get to the essence, right? The essence of who you are, which is love. You know? Like, I mean, I look at my kids and they don't even know hate. They don't know hate. They've never been taught hate, so why would they know hate? You know, all they want to do is be kind to people. You know, it's like, hate, you are taught hate. Yes, absolutely. Like, and I love you framing it that way. It's like, I'm just trying to strip the fat. Like, and if we can start doing that and like get to the core, get to the real meat, right, of who we are, then I think we're getting somewhere. Hopefully, you know. Yeah. Abolition. Yeah. Abolition says that harm is just part of being human. Right? Yeah, ain't it? Yeah. We're gonna cause harm. It's just our human nature. Yeah. But then how do you forgive? How do we do better? How do we not just go to punish, right? Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. It's a beautiful question. There's this notion that if I love you, I'm not going to hurt you. And I get it, you know, but I think that also disavows the truth of, to your point, of human nature. You know, whether intentionally or not, we are going to cause harm. You know, if it's not to a partner, it might be to an insect. It might be to our community or environment. It might be through third-party experiences. Like if you are holding an iPhone 12, 11 or above, you know what I'm saying? It's we are not exempt from that. Like, you know, we are harming somebody by being part of the system that oppresses some people. And so like I think discernment is a skill. It's a skill. It's a skill that I wish we were taught more often, because on one hand, someone could say that, and an argument, right, you know, would be, you know, well, if that's the case, then I gotta, you know, you're just gonna walk around naked, I guess. You can't do nothing. And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is just to be mindful of the ways in which we cause harm and try to limit the harm that we cause, you know, in this world. Because everyone is subject to it, and everyone is doing it on some level, macro or micro. And consciously or unconsciously, right? Exactly. You know, and so I think it's something this word has been coming up a bit more often these past like 2 weeks or so for me, but acceptance. And acceptance comes with the ability to see a thing for what it is and to be with that thing regardless of how that thing might make us feel. Which I think, again, if we're thinking about this through the lens of Buddhism, like acceptance also omits suffering, you know, because suffering comes when we cling to a thing, when we cling to this idea of something as other than what the experience is, you know. So it's like, I don't want the hurt. I don't want to feel the hurt. Well, the hurt is here.
You know, you've lost a loved one. You're watching these extreme levels of violence happening on a daily basis. It's happening. You know, avoidance is not a strategy that serves us well at all. It might serve us well for a day or two potentially. You know,
Catches up with us.
absolutely in many ways. And so, I think that abolitionist mindset of acceptance is a part of that. Accountability is also a part of that, and accountability of self first and foremost, I think, also creates that invitation for forgiveness. You know, because people, and then also too, recognizing that forgiveness does not necessarily mean you and I are going to be in community with each other. And again, this is the discernment comes in, where it's like, what is the harm, and what was the harm caused? How are both parties involved in harm, both the person who has caused the harm and also the person on the other end of the harm? How are they feeling about potentially engaging in community again? I think community gets to play a role too in
Oh, huge.
you know, if we go back to carceral culture, you know, we throw people in jail and we act as if they're not going to come back home. Right? Like they're just not going to be part of our community. And so what tends to happen though is like we do everything in our power to ostracize said people who have been. So then what's the point? Really, it doesn't create an opportunity for change and for growth. And then I think we poison the water in that way. We poison ourselves really by continuing to lean into that. And so I think the acceptance is a part of that. The accountability is a part of that, and those two things I think, and the discernment then allow room for like the forgiveness to happen. And again, I have to remind folks like that forgiveness does not mean that they're not being held accountable. I think we think sometimes that if you forgive a person, it means that the harm that they've caused is now just kind of swept under the rug, and it's not. We acknowledge it, we accept it, and then we also work towards some level of understanding, acceptance, and like the forgiveness does not mean you like this person. It doesn't mean that you are now best friends, you know what I'm saying? But it's that the forgiveness really is about you, you know. And I've heard some folks say like, I don't need to do that. And I'm like, I can already, that attitude of like, I don't need to do that already tells me you actually do. Like forgiveness, because what forgiveness does is it opens the palette. It opens the palette of love that exists inside of all of us.
Yeah. Or else you're closing yourself to your own love.
Yeah, and like that doesn't feel like a future or a present I want to be in at all. You know, like that limits how we get to liberate ourselves too.
Yeah.
And if liberation is the thing that I care about, then I need to be open to the possibilities.
Yeah, our capacity to love each other is only as big as our capacity to love ourselves. Right?
Yeah, bingo.
I want to talk about community a little bit, just because I grew up with a lot of community, and I think because I grew up also in war, so when so much is taken away, community is really the only thing that helps you survive.
Yes,
Yeah, like what's the role of community in all this, and how important is it?
I mean, you know, like, you know, I say community is everything. Community is everything. More so than money, than like I think romantic partnership, than I don't know, like your work, like community. And you know what I want us to feel. I want us to feel free enough to like find community everywhere. You know, some of the conversations that I've been having lately have been about reframing how we think about work, because we go in, it's like, I'm just here to get a check, and I get that. But if work was enjoyable, you know, and so much of that work being enjoyable is not about having like a foosball table in an office setting, or like, you know what I'm saying? This is like, if I'm going, whether I'm going to work at, you know, Popeyes or some like a magazine, you know what I'm saying? It's really about having a place where I feel safe enough to show up as myself.
That's what I was going to say. Like safety is such like the heart of community. That's how we stay safe.
Yeah.
That is how we stay safe. That's how we, you know, try to protect each other from harm.
Yeah.
You know?
And if that's front of mind, which is really such an act of love. It's like, how can I keep everyone here safe? If we're all thinking in those ways, it doesn't mean we're not going to harm each other, but it then means we're going to be able to have a conversation about the harm, and also find some level of retribution, and like find a way out together, right, as a community. I don't know, like so much of my work is rooted in that, and I've found salvation in community. I found art in community. community has been very much like I think I wrote in the book, like, while love and art were like a bomb, so was community been for me. Like, community now has done and offered me so much. Again, without community, I'm not sitting here with you, right?
100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we're finding each other in these very unique and magical ways. But the only way that happens is if we're grounded in this practice of we actually need each other to survive and to thrive and to get free. Like, I can't get free without you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And like, we can't get free without each other in that way.
Exactly. Which is so different than the hyper individual, hyper capitalist. Like, we're supposed to do everything on our own, you know?
Yeah, and none of that is real.
Nope.
Like, no one is, like, none of that is real. Bootstraps, whatever you want to, even if you're like, I'm the self-made person, someone is buying the product, somebody is.
You're never self-made. You're never self-made.
Never.
No, didn't you have a mother at some point? Didn't you have, like, there's so many people.
I just landed here. I'm an alien, baby. You know what I mean? I have no help. And it's like, somebody along the way.
The idea of a self-made, like, who invented that, you know? It's like...
Oh, yeah, white people. What are you talking about? White people. White people did that. Roosevelt did it. Like, shout out to Theo. You know what I'm saying? Like, all them old dudes who sat with the Constitution and were like, yep, slaves and women, no rights. But we know what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I made this all by myself. Look at all my slaves in this plantation. Like, no, you didn't. You didn't at all. I'm pretty sure there was a heap of people who share your last name, who had a large stake in how this world came to be, how this country came to be, how these colonies and these cities and these states came to be. Yeah. I can walk past Wall Street every day if I wanted to and recognize the amount of sweat, blood, and life that was given in order for folks to, like, bankroll their hedge funds. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a long history of indigenous bodies that were lost because people thought they wanted to find, they were looking for ways of freedom, and that freedom meant they had to step on the lives and bodies of others. And it's like, you build your foundation on that kind of land, and then you see what you reap. And like, you look at these college campuses today, there's community there, and like, we are reaping what has been sowed, on a very fundamental, foundational way,
So how do we love radically?
How do we love radically? Man, just be honest. Just be honest. Just be honest about our motivations, about our wants. Be true. And like, we say we're being honest, like, yeah, this is just who I am. And I'm like, it's actually not who you are.
It's not true, yeah.
It's the mask, it's the shield. And it's really, it comes down to just being vulnerable. Yeah. Again, someone has to be the first.
Yep. And it's real. I mean, we go through shit in our life and we protect ourselves, right? Yeah. So we don't get hurt, going back to being hurt, right? Absolutely.
But like Lauryn Hill in her Unplugged CD, Volume 2, she says this, what did she say? Like, she uses this instance where she's like, I lifting up your shirt and being like, oh, and someone going like, oh, you have a belly button too, right? Like, that level of vulnerability where it's like, here's who I am. I'm unmasking myself. I'm showing myself to you. And then you go, oh, wait, I didn't know you had that. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know you were going through that. That vulnerability, to me, that's where the radical love starts. Like, that is both the beginning and also the epicenter for all of the work, because then we get to the real, like you were talking about, like these like kind of needling down to like the core of who we are. And like, it's stripping the layers, it's stripping the mask. And it's just like, what else? Like, what else do I need to let go of? Like, what else am I clinging to? These ways of being for myself, and also these ideas of self and these ideas of the other. We other each other a lot, and there's no vulnerability in that. But like, the real vulnerability is like, I've caused harm, or I'm saying, like, I need love today, or I need a hug today, or I don't feel good about myself today, or I'm sorry I did this to you. I wish you hadn't have done this. I need you. Like we need each other, and I think we're afraid to kind of say that out loud. I'm not. What I'm saying? Like, I need people to buy the book. I need people to hug me. I need people to tell me that they love me. Because I'm not going to be here for a long time.
I love you, Joél.
I love you. I do. And, like, if I'm going to be here for another I mean, God willing, like another 50 years, let's say, I want to be as loving as humanly possible. And I want people to feel loved in my presence. And so much of that is being able to say, like, I see you, I know what you need, and I'm here to offer it. And in not feeling like any sweat off my back to do so, because I've widened my capacity for love. But in order to do that, I've had to get really vulnerable with myself and with other people in the process, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, one little story that's come up for me while you're talking is I think of my kids, when say
Yeah.
a kid makes them feel left out, or, they makes them feel like they don't belong, instead of like shutting it down or telling them that they're going to be okay. I'm like, I know how that feels.
That's beautiful.
Like
Yeah.
I was that kid too. I had like red hair, I had freckles, I had glasses, like
Yeah.
all the things. And
Yeah.
sometimes I wasn't included either,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just like, then they're like, oh, mama also knows what I'm feeling right now,
That's
And I think
sweet.
that's what we all want. Like, let's get real.
Let's get real. Let's get real. And like, that's such a beautiful sentiment. Because I remember when Lila had told me some kids didn't, they didn't want to be a friend, and I was ready to fuck them up. I was like, where are they? You are awesome.
That's what my partner was.
Carceral. Like, they need to be punished for this.
I don't know what we've been talking about for the past hour.
You slighting my child? But no, you're absolutely right. It's like having to recognize that this is the human condition. And like, I love that example because it also reminds me of how early it starts and like how early, like we as human beings, we find the differences in each other. So like to your point earlier, there may not be hate, but there's also like, oh, you have red hair, or oh, your skin is darker than mine, or why do you read like that? Like my kids say sometimes things that would come across as hurtful, or mean, where it's like they're just asking questions or they're making assessments based on what they're seeing, right?
Yeah.
They're not probing any further because they're kids.
Yeah.
But it starts so early, and then we get to show up as guardians, as protectors, as parents, to give them language, right? Like you so beautifully did, where it's like, well, yeah, I've been there too, like West, my 4-year-old the other day, like random, but she was just like, I forget what I said to her. I got her out of the bath, and I think I called her like a beautiful black girl. She's like, Daddy, I'm not black, I'm brown. And she was like yelling, I'm not black. And I was like, you are, it was just, she's butt ass naked, just yelling, I'm not black. I'm like, well, I mean, but like that, but she's like, I'm looking at color. I know my black crayon. I know what it looks like. And like, that's not me. Kids, and like we give them language. I used to say often, like this table, for example, when Lila was a kid, I used to tell people, if I told Lila this was a rainbow, she would go to school and she would have told people that this was a rainbow up until someone tried to correct her as such, because I was entrusted as the person based like with as being a guide in her journey to enable this kind of language for her. And so some people misuse that privilege.
Exactly, going back to indoctrination and what you feed your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this part in your book that goes back to poetry that I loved so much that I thought maybe you'd like to read a little bit.
Sure.
It's a little bit on 2 pages. It starts here and then it goes into there. But you can read as much as you want of it.
Oh, yeah.
But I love it. I loved
do.
it. I mean, it actually inspired me to write a couple poems.
What? Yeah. That's awesome. That's the goal. Like, I want more people to like write poetry. Some people like hate poetry. There's some people who are like, oh, because they don't understand it. I'm like, that's good. That's part of the practice too. It's like, what are you getting from this? Like, I feel like poetry is like a lingual, like Rorschach. It's like, what are you seeing here? And like, whatever you're seeing is the thing you're supposed to get from it. Like people ask, what did you mean? I'm like, what did you think I meant? And like, that feels like really like esoteric and like seedy and like, whatever, and heady rather. But I'm like, I want you to be able to reimagine what this feels like in your body. Like, so much of it is like less about like how you're interpreting the language, like in the mind, but how you're feeling the language, and where is it landing? Like, where is it landing is like a really crucial part of that. When I wanted to die, I wrote a poem. Then I wrote more poems. Then I read poetry, and even the things that didn't make sense reset themselves. Poetry has saved my life, has saved many lives. That has not changed and will not change. Please, Write all the poems now, and often break them open with your teeth, with a pen. Take them from the pit of the stomach and shout them out, make them loud. Poetry will be our greatest soundtrack, our ears to the streets. Soap boxes replete with box sets of the latest and greatest, from street corner church revivers, from porno turned photo all-stars, from those that study genetics and the laws of tea and pottery.
So good.
Thank you.
So good.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for me, it was just kind of the reminders of where poetry can come from, where poets come from. And if we're talking about labels, who do we assign the role of poet and storyteller? You know, my mom is a storyteller. You know, I record my mom. Anytime I get the chance, I record her. She doesn't know I'm recording her. You know, or maybe she does, and she's playing the fool. I don't know, you know. But like, you know, I'll be trying to record on the low because, you know, my mom is 76. And unfortunately, my mom is not, you know, invincible. And so who will tell her story when she's not here? You know? And part of the writing the book is that. It's like the book is archival. It's also me capturing the names of streets, of people, of language in a way so that even when I'm not here, my girls have a thing. And then when my girls are not here, their cousins or their friends or their neighbors or people who have no idea who I am or who they are will have this thing that they can look back to that speaks to a thing that exists outside of myself. And so poetry, it's that. And and for me, it's really that idea of everything is poetry and we're all poets. As much as a very snooty art connoisseur I am, I do also believe that we're all poets and we all have the ability to be poets and even to be poetry in that way, you know?
Yeah. When I read your words, I was thinking about how in order to write poetry, you have to feel. You have to let yourself feel.
Yeah.
And how powerful that is because we spend so much time kind of suppressing and bottling our feelings, right? But poetry like asks you to feel.
Yeah. And I feel everything. And, you know, and not like in the like, you know, woo, I'm an empath and like, get over yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm empathetic, but it's like so much of that to that language and like the way people kind of, I think, misuse that in ways that I think feels egoic. Yeah, I feel everything. And so that's why I can't feel what's happening in the world, right? I have to kind of step away. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel too much. And it's like, okay, relax. Like there's a genocide happening. You know, but poetry, it requires us to feel deeply about something, anything. You know what I mean? And like that when we talk about getting free and collective liberation, like that's where it starts, that vulnerability to be able to say, I can access this feeling. Some of us can't. Some of us don't know how to because we haven't been given the tools, the language, or the resources. And so like that's where folks like you and myself come in, I think, where it's like creating room and space to question, to be curious, and then also too to give folks language to get curious and to question, and to also give folks language that enables the process to start and to see things in ways that they hadn't before, you know?
Are there any tools or practices that have helped you through this whole healing journey, healing and liberation journey that you could share?
I think breathing deeply and right and seeing how that feels in the body and in the lungs. So much of that is presence, and like being able to come back to that when like I feel adrift or I don't feel like I'm present. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to kind of click back into that, right? And so like that's been a big part of that for me. Writing, for sure. You know, people ask me about the book and like how. And it wasn't hard to write about the traumatic things because I've been talking about and writing about the traumatic things for as long as I can remember. Because that was my practice. That was the way I was able to save myself. Because when I didn't have a person who I felt like I could turn to, I could always come back to the language. And that language also allowed me, it's like no different than when folks journal. And like I encourage folks to like not just write in your journal, but go back and read it. Because you'll start seeing like, oh, you know, because we get older and we get more language, we have more experience, and that language allows us to see our older versions of self in ways that we hadn't before, because we're not in that experience anymore, you know? And so the writing, Rest. People ask me about like rest, like you do so much. I'm like, I nap. You know, I nap and I rest and I put myself first. I don't, like we're both parents here, and it's the thing I had to remind my partner of. It's like, listen, the babies are going to be fine because we love them. Love is going to be in the space. I need you to take care of yourself. I need you to be mindful of that. And I need you to feel like it's okay to like do things for yourself. Actually, you need to do things for yourself in order to create a healthy environment for children. I think our children need to see us living our lives as adults, as human beings. I think they need to see us mess up a little bit. I think we need to be able to have conversations with them about those things. I also think like, my daughter was really sad about me leaving this weekend. And I was like, I love you. I'm sorry. And also daddy travels sometimes. And you know that, right? And like, it's going to be okay because I'm going to be back.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm always like, mama comes back. She always comes back.
And like they need those reminders. And they also need to see that. They also need to be able to see you living your life and doing the things that fulfill you.
Exactly.
And so that also, I think comes back to the presence.
Yeah,
of mind.
yesterday my 5-year-old said, Mama, are you still filming Into Healing? Sure am, baby.
I am. And such a beautiful thing for them to be able to experience and see and bear witness to see you in process, to see us in process and like learning and growing and expanding. And questioning, like those are very much the grounding principles for me. Like, and once I really started putting myself first, and not like in this way that is again egoic and selfish, but like, what do I need in order to be of best?
To show up for everyone,
exactly.
For them, for my work, for everything.
Yeah. If I'm asking that of myself, I also get to ask that of others too. Like, yo, what do you need? How can I be of support in that journey for you? And creating space for that. Even if that space might infringe sometimes on the things that I want, but it's like that's where the compromise comes in. That's where community becomes paramount.
Yeah, and when I think about our kids, what kind of role model are we if we're teaching them complete self-sacrifice, right? That we're not doing anything that lights us up, and that becomes what they see. As like this is normal to just completely give up on any dreams you have, right?
Yeah, and that doesn't feel like a way of being or living for me at all,
Yeah. For people who don't have a community or don't have a community that feels really nurturing to them, how do they find that? And, I think of myself of like, going to a new place and not having a lot of community, how I've kind of leaned on just the ethers to kind of stay in touch with my people or find new people that kind of share values, share passions, all that. And because it's not just our physical community, but it's also conversations we're having, DMs we're having. It's people that we feel see us, that we see. Yeah. Right?
I love that you framed it that way because it's even when I'm talking to young writers about the process of writing, and it's like so much of the book, not a whole lot of it, but like some parts of the book were written on Twitter. They were like either like affirmations I had shared or like tweets of things or even Instagram captions that started as a thing. I was like, oh, this actually feels like a good body of text for an essay. And I say that to say like in conjunction with like community, it's like it's everywhere. We have to just be willing, I think, to probe and to find it. And like, granted, nothing can replace like physical community. Like we need to like see each other, to feel each other, to touch, like to hear, but like this is also why I send voice notes a lot to people.
I love that.
Yeah, because it's like it's the easiest way of communication for me, and it's also I love also hearing a voice on the other side. And so for those who might feel ostracized from community or don't have community, like it's hard, it's a practice, but like again, it comes back to that vulnerability. Someone has to take the first step. And if it's the thing that you seek, then it's the thing that you have to be willing to put yourself out on a limb for a little bit. And that could be really hard and really scary. And so much of that is like really being able to we can start with like a mindfulness practice, I think, first and foremost, because that fear of like, I don't want to rub people the wrong way. I don't want to push people away. I don't want to seem weird or, I don't want to seem like out there, whatever the case might be. And it's like, it's the risk we have to be willing to take in order to ground ourselves in something bigger than ourselves, which is community and that communal energy. And you're gonna like, again, we talk about our children, like, you know, Lila wanting to be friends with kids and when she was 4, and then those kids not reciprocating that. Those kids didn't, but like a whole bunch of other kids did. And you know, there's a childlike innocence that comes from, like, you watch children play, you know, like they'll walk over to somebody like, hey, do you want to be my friend? It's
sweet.
that is a really scary thing for us to do as adults. It's really hard for us to go, hey, I think your shoes are cool. Where did you get them? You know what I'm saying? Or like if I'm online, it's, oh, I see you posting these things that resonate with me. I just wanted to tell you I think you're awesome. You know, I'd love to grab coffee or tea or virtual coffee or virtual tea, you know. And then there's so many places to actually congregate and find community. Like, especially if you're in a place like, okay, let's say if we take it offline, you know, where are the things happening that I'm interested in? Like, if you're the person that loves Dungeons and Dragons, I guarantee you there's a Dungeons and Dragons group in your city, because they motherfuckers is everywhere. You know what I'm saying? D&D, you know what I mean? But like, there's also, like, if you're into chess, if you're into I don't know, if you're into polyamory, if you're into marriage, if you're into Catholicism, if you're like all these things, there are communities for those things. And so, like, you know, if you're recovering, if you're in recovery, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a community for the thing that is always going to be seeking more community members for it as well. And so I think that's where it starts. It's just like being open to also, what are the things that intrigue us? What are the things that we care about? What are the things that we love? And then being open to like seeking those things out and those people out, and to be vulnerable in those spaces. And sometimes going into that space doesn't mean talking. You know, sometimes it just means about being in the energy of the community. You might not say a word for the first 3 weeks. Somebody might come up to you and ask you, like, those are the things that, like, again, it comes back to that vulnerability practice of being willing enough to put ourselves out there in order to to reap the greater reward of love that's on the other side of that.
Yeah,
you know?
like, hey, I'm feeling this, or I'm going through this.
Yeah.
And suddenly people just come out of the
Yeah.
woodwork going, me too.
Yeah, you know, like, and then like, if we're getting really curious about that experience of like, I've lost a parent or I've lost a pet, there is especially in this age that we live in, there is a group for everything. There's a support group for everything, and finding those things. And so the only way we know what those things are, with those, whether it be the passions or those pain points are, is really getting curious about our experience and our existence, and asking questions about, what am I sifting through? What am I feeling? You know, is this grief? Is this loss? And what kind of grief or loss or joy am I feeling? Oh, I really love writing, or I miss my dad. Okay, there's probably a group for that. There's probably a community for that in some way or somewhere, you know?
Yeah. How do you feel about healing communities as a Black man?
Good question. You know, I think, and we were kind of talking on the side about this, right? Like, so much of like how we think about healing, how we talk about healing, has been very much co-opted, right, by whiteness. But if we're thinking about healing modalities, and we're thinking about healing as not just the language, but as a practice, like, that's ancestral. You know what I'm saying? Like, the yoga poses, like the building shrines, right? The
Energy work. We all have it, right?
Tarot, like all this, like,
Connecting to the lands.
hoodoo, like farming, gardening, like, yes, all these things are so much, like, it's embedded in the Black and brown experience globally, and has been. And so I think a lot of the ways we get to, like, I think detach ourselves from like the ways in which we think healing maybe isn't for us as a practice. I think it's really about accessibility. I think it's about accessibility and about representation, for sure. Like, you know, when I think about even writing the book, you know, granted, I don't want to say like the book was meant to be healing. You know, if that is the case, wonderful. But I think, I mean, for me, it was healing writing it. I think, but it was more like, I have this language that I want to share with the world, and I didn't really have someone who felt accessible and who also looked like me in that way, if that makes sense. Like, I'm very accessible. You know this. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, from whether it's a DM or an email or even just out and about in the world. Like I want to touch people. I want to see people. And so with that, I think too, there comes this, I think there comes this responsibility to recognize I need to make sure the language isn't dense. I'm not talking to people through this like philosophical, inherited Eurocentric standard of talking through and being with. Like I also have to know my audience, you know, and that's not about dumbing down the language, but it's really just about making sure I'm communicating effectively in ways that feels understandable and resonant to the people I'm communicating with and to. You know what I'm saying? Like the way I'm going to talk to a Black 5-year-old might be different than the way I'm going to talk to a 32-year-old Black man. Maybe. And like we might be saying the same things, I might just be saying it in different ways because I have to recognize also too the experience of the person I'm sharing space and time and energy with. And so a lot of the ways that we get to show up as healers and folks who are healing, right, and healing, not healed, but healing, right, because it's an ongoing process, right? It's a never-ending cycle. I think that work is really embedded in making sure it feels accessible to those who don't have the resources or the tools or the language, and making it feel like, you know, like when I'm talking to a person, I need to be cognizant of their experience. And I get to ask questions about their experience and make sure that the message I'm sharing and delivering in that space we're engaging with is effective. It's an effective use of their time and mind. And that level of awareness only comes with like the responsibility that we feel like we have, the shared responsibility of navigating each other and ourselves through like this healing journey, you know? But the language has to feel real to people. And the work has to feel real. Like I have to be able to relate it to like your struggle. I have to relate it to like your practice. So like, well, I can't meditate. I ain't got time to meditate. It's like you got 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be perfect, bro. It doesn't have to be this thing where you don't, like, we all have thoughts. We have intrusive thoughts. We have thoughts that we are not our thoughts anyway. You know what I'm saying? And some of that is like being able to just feel like folks can relate to you in that way. And if they can relate, then they can also trust the messenger and the message that they're getting in that way, you know? And like that language is not just for the yoga or the yogi practitioner, right? It's for the everyday person who's just like trying to get by. And like, what do I need? Like, what is going to feel like sustenance for me to get me to the next day, you know? And that starts with the practice. And that practice starts with us and each other being in community with each other.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joél.
Oh, thank you. All right, this is awesome.
It's such a treat.
Yeah. Word. Likewise. Yeah.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. You can connect with Into Healing on TikTok and Instagram for more inspirational and behind-the-scenes content, and visit our website, intohealing.com, for transcripts and other goodies. Thank you for joining us.